everybody, welcome back to my channel. So this is the first video that I'm filming in our new house besides the empty house tour that I did, but we weren't moved in then. That was, we'd got the keys like a couple of days earlier and we'd just like come in to do it, and everyone had been in and out painting the house and whatnot. So I'm not really counting that as you know, my first video in the house, because we're gonna be here for a long time. So this, once I get my proper setup, at the moment I'm just filming in our like master bedroom, but I want to convert one of the other bedrooms into like my studio, which will remain permanently set up basically. So I don't want this video to be extremely long, but I might end up splitting it into two parts depending on how many questions and the length of the questions, etc. I have some questions. It's going to be a mixture of ones off Instagram, like an Instagram post, an Instagram story, like I put up a little questions thing, and then I also posted in the community on here, and I asked you guys like suggestions for videos and questions for this Q&A. So I'm going to kind of get a mixture from all three places and try and, you know, have a bit of variety. Let's start with my Instagram one. So this month, the month of May, is Ehlers-Danlos Loss Awareness Month. Now, Ehlers-Danlos is a genetic condition, so you're born with it basically, and it causes, at least the type I have, it causes like me to dislocate on the daily, and it also causes a lot of secondary conditions, which I'll get to as we get into the questions. But yeah, happy EDS Awareness Month, and let's get cracking. Also, I am connected to my TPN, so if you can hear my pump, just ignore it. So, first question is, how many pills or medicine do you take every day? I don't know the exact number, but a lot. Like, I sometimes use those like pill containers that you get, and they're always like filled to the brim, and then some days I have to use like 2 days worth for the one day, if that makes sense, because I just can't fit them all in the container, which is why I stopped using the containers. So I now just have this as my med bag, and then within that I have like just like sheets and sheets of medications that I'm on, and then any others that aren't in here are in my bedside drawer or in my medicine drawer, because some of them I leave in there because I don't need them, you know, in here necessarily. Things that I don't always take every day, if that makes sense. Is being premature, can it make EDS worse when you're an adult? So I was born 3 months early, so I was born at 6 months, and I had a lot of issues. Obviously, I was very, very premature, and I spent a lot of time in an incubator in the hospital, hooked up to feeds and all sorts of stuff. My doctors specifically think that being premature has caused my EDS to be worse compared to like other people in my family who have EDS. I mean, I don't know if there's any actual clinical evidence proving that being born premature makes it worse or makes it more likely that you're gonna have problems down the line and things like that, but specifically in my case, my doctors think that, you know, being premature did play some sort of factor into how, you know, ill I am now. So I hope that answered your question. Why is the zebra the symbol of EDS? Good question. So, there's a saying in the medical world, and I'm not sure if this is the exact saying, so don't quote me on this, but I know this is like roughly why. So basically, the zebra in general in the medical community means rare. In like hospitals and whatever, doctors have a thing where they go, when you hear hoof beats, think horses, not zebras. And what they mean by that is that obviously horses are like very common, and you know, that's the first thing you would normally think about is a horse if you were to hear hoofbeats. So the saying means think of horses, not zebras, because zebras are more rare, and basically it means that when you get a patient admitted to hospital, they've got a cough or, you know, whatever, or a bad chest infection. So the first things, you know, doctors are going to be thinking about is let's take a chest x-ray, let's see if they've got a chest infection or maybe pneumonia, because they're, you know, the most common things when people come in with respiratory problems, especially older people. And the reason is because that patient is more likely to have a bad chest infection or pneumonia than something like, I don't know, emphysema or whatever, something that's rarer basically. So it's to stop doctors from doing very rare tests to try and find out what's wrong with patients, because the chances of them actually having that rare disease are very slim compared to having just like a chest infection, if that makes sense. I probably explained that horrifically, but I hope that makes sense. So the reason the symbol is a zebra is because EDS is a rare condition, so the symbol for it is a zebra, to say that we're rare but we're special. And yeah. How old were you when you got diagnosed, and what were your symptoms? So I got diagnosed around 18, but I had symptoms my whole life, but they got brushed off a lot by doctors. I had a lot of like growing pains and sprains, and then I started having trouble with my knee, which was dislocating, and I had all this like weird bruising all over my body and all over my leg. So I've had like joint issues like my whole life, but whenever I was injured or whatever and my mom or dad took me to the doctors, they were just like, oh, it's growing pains, it's growing pains. And then eventually I got so old that they were like, it can't be growing pains anymore, like you're not growing. And then they started like looking into stuff, and I was having a lot of trouble with my hip at the time, so I went to go see this like physio surgeon person who's like a specialist, and he did the Baton score on me, or the Baton scale, which is part of the diagnostic criteria for EDS. And I think I scored like a 9 out of 9, which is the most you can get. And then he asked me, I remember, and he was like, has anyone ever talked to you about the possibility of you having EDS? And I was like, no. I've never heard of it before, and that was the first time I'd heard of it. We kind of got the ball rolling then for me to be diagnosed and investigated a bit more. So yeah, I was 18 and my first symptoms were like joint pain and joint instability, and that was like from being very, very little, but it was just put off my whole life as just being a teenager. And so I was an active person. I was a tomboy. I was always climbing trees and falling over, and there were so many times when I fell and should have broken a bone but didn't, because I'm so bendy that it prevented me from breaking bones. So I only ever broke like a couple things as a child. But yeah, next question. Can you have EDS if you don't have bendy fingers? Yes. So they recently changed the diagnostic criteria. I think it was like last year or something like that. It's a lot harder to get diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos now. There's a lot of other like factors that they have to bring into it, and some of those start with your age, because obviously as you get older you become less flexible. So they will ask, like for example my mum, they would say, oh, could you touch your thumb to your wrist at some point, or could you do this, or blah blah blah, at whatever point in your life. So yeah, depending on your age and other factors, they go through the criteria, and I think you have to get certain points on certain sections to actually get the diagnosis. And I know for a fact when they changed the criteria, I think whenever it was, like last year or whatever, when they changed it, a lot of people that had been previously been diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos were then undiagnosed because they no longer meted the criteria. And there are so many types of EDS that, and there's also, you know, hypermobility syndrome disorder or whatever it's called, and that's very similar to EDS, but it isn't Ehlers-Danlos. Ehlers-Danlos has a lot of factors that have to like come into it, basically. To answer the question, can you have EDS if you don't have bendy fingers? Yes. Moving on. Does it ever get better? Will the symptoms ever be more mild? Honestly, like there's no easy yes or no answer, because some people improve with age. I know people that have been really ill, you know, they hit puberty, they're really ill, and then as they grow up into a more mature adult, so say they're like late 20s, 30s, they get better and their symptoms become more mild or more manageable. And then there's like the other end of the spectrum where the older you get, the worse it gets. For me, that's my situation at the moment. Like the older I get, the worse it gets. And I've had quite a lot of deterioration, can't speak, over the last like 12 months or so. Yeah, it's so hard to answer because it's like a yes or no question. I'm hoping though, eventually, that as I get older, like into my 30s and stuff, that things will become more mild. because I really don't want to end up being a full-time wheelchair user. Not that there's anything wrong with using a wheelchair, it's just, you know, I don't want to end up like that. And I know a lot of people that do have Ehlers-Danlos do end up being like fully wheelchair bound, and I just don't want that for myself. I mean, obviously, who does want that? Like, that's not something people want, but I don't know. We'll cross that bridge if we get to it, rather than worrying about something that may never even happen. Does EDS affect your sex life? Yes. It never used to, but the older I got, the worse it got, and then it got to the point where we couldn't, you know, have sex because it would just dislocate my hips and other joints, and then it ended up being more of a chore than something that, you know, is meant to be pleasurable. We kind of had to reassess our, you know, intimate moments because it ended up being, you know, such a painful thing to do. It just wasn't worth it. You know, I was in like agony, and Tom doesn't want to, you know, see me like that or whatever. So then we had to kind of adapt the way we do things. Now we've found a way to have sex, and I say have sex because we're not actually having sex, but we found like ways to cope and ways to like pleasure each other and enjoy those moments without it being an extremely painful scenario. I hope that makes sense without being too graphic. Are women with EDS able to carry and deliver babies? Yes and no. It like, you know, like I've been saying, EDS is a spectrum. You know, you can have someone with the exact same condition as me, but have it so mild that they don't even dislocate, they don't have any secondary health problems, they live a completely normal life, and, you know, maybe just have some mild joint pain. And then there's people like me that are severely, you know, affected from it. I could probably conceive, but I wouldn't be able to carry the baby to term, and I would have an extremely high chance of miscarrying just because of the way my insides are. And as soon as the baby grows and gets heavy, it would basically, like, my uterus would, like, I don't know if it's called prolapse, but basically the baby wouldn't be able to be held in place and you would end up miscarrying. Miscarriage is actually super common with people with EDS. All that aside, even if I could carry it to term and whatnot, and I made it that far, I couldn't have a natural birth because of the way my hips are. It would have to be a cesarean. Moving on from that, another issue would be it would have a 50-50 chance of being born with Ehlers-Danlos because it is a genetic / hereditary condition. You pass it on to your children. So then I have to say to myself, do I risk my child having EDS? I mean, it could come out fine, have EDS and not have, you know, much health issues at all, and then on the other end it could be way worse than me and completely wheelchair bound for the rest of its life. And I don't know if I could deal with my child suffering like that and knowing that it was my fault and I made that choice. As far as having kids, like, my doctors have turned around and said, like, you can't really have them, but there's new therapies coming out all the time and new options. You know, down the line, if we decide we want children, we are, you know, happy to adopt. That's something that Tom and I have talked about, and he's keen on that idea. How's your hip you had surgery on? Do you still have pain or rarely? By the way, I hope you're doing better lately. I'm doing alright at the moment, struggling with my mental health quite a bit, probably the worst it's been in a long time. But what can you do? Last year, around, it was the end of June, I had surgery on my right hip to fix my hip dysplasia and all the tendon damage and ligament damage and all that, and to repair the socket where it's like little bits of bone have been chipped off from all the dislocations. So I had quite a major operation on my hip to try and fix all the issues I was having with it. It has significantly, like, improved. I mean, I still struggle with it a lot, but the pain isn't as bad as it was before. I mean, it is still in constant pain, but it's not as bad as it was before. And before, I was dislocating like 30 to 50 times a day on that right hip, and it was like in agony all the time. As I was recovering, my left side got worse, obviously, because I had to have all my weight just on that side, so it made the left side deteriorate a lot quicker than it was meant to. So I'm currently waiting for surgery on this side now, but I would definitely do the surgery again because it has made such a big difference to the amount of dislocations I get. Now I only get about 5 to 10 a day, which seems like a lot for some people, but for me that's good. And now I want to get the left side done because that is getting worse and worse by the days. Is it genetic? Did you inherit it? If not, what causes it? Yes, it's genetic. You can't get EDS, like, you know, you can't get a cold, you know, it's not like a cold. Like, you can't just pick it up on the street. Yeah, you have to get it from a parent. I mean, I guess it has to start somewhere, but it's extremely unlikely that you will be the first carrier. If you've been diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos, there will be someone in your family, maybe someone that's passed away, and then you look back and you think, oh my gosh, they had issues. It was most likely EDS, but you know, however many 50 years ago or whatever, I don't even know if it existed, or you know, I mean, I'm sure it existed, but I don't know if it was like known about, if that makes sense. Is it life-threatening? Yes and no. It depends on the type that you have. For example, vascular, which I have components of vascular EDS. It's rare, but you can actually have multiple types of EDS. I have traits of both classical EDS and vascular hypermobile EDS, which is the one that I'm diagnosed with. Yeah, there are 13 types of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and they all have different components, but specifically vascular, because of the way like your body is like made up of, like you're very likely to rupture your organs, which if that happens, it can, like, it's life-threatening, it's extremely dangerous. So obviously hypermobile type is the most common type, but it's not the most life-threatening. However, if you have complications from EDS, for example, your GI system shuts down, or you go into intestinal failure and you rely on things like TPN, that can be dangerous because you've got a central line that's going into your heart, and if that gets infected, the bacteria goes straight into your bloodstream and causes sepsis and septic shock, and that is life-threatening. That can kill you. So in short, the EDS itself might not kill you, unless you have, like, you know, the vascular type. It's the co-conditions that, or treatment options and stuff like that, that can kill you. How is it living with EDS in the current pandemic situation? Has it affected the way you live life and when you go to the hospital for appointments? Yes. The COVID-19 crisis has had a humongous impact on my life. The biggest impact has been my mental health. I've been struggling so much the last couple months, more than I've struggled ever before. It's just been really, really difficult. But as far as like hospital appointments and stuff like that goes, all my appointments and whatnot have been like cancelled, and they're now telephone appointments or video calls. So basically at the time of my appointment, so I have an appointment next week at 10:45 with the pain team, so they're gonna ring, and basically I'll just like set my alarm for like 10:40 and then wake up, and then in a couple minutes they'll give me a call and I'll be like, hello, which saves me having to get up and drive to the hospital and pay for parking and all that. So I guess it's kind of a pro, you know, pros and cons here, people. Yes, my mental health is shit, but I don't have to go to the hospital and infect myself with sickly people. But also the fact that like I've not been able to leave the house has been rough. I didn't think it would affect me, honestly, but it did, it has. I didn't realize how such a small thing like going to get my medications from the pharmacy or going to the hospital to see my doctors for appointments, like they're like social outings, and I needed that apparently, because without it, like my mental health takes a dive off a cliff. So yeah, and then if I need any scripts and stuff, they fax them to my chemist and then send the script by post, so they've got the hard copy too. Moving on. Maybe about how you got diagnosed. I've also been really interested in how EDS is related to your other conditions. So I was diagnosed firstly by the physio surgeon guy that I saw that I talked about, and he was the first one that mentioned EDS to me, and then got sent to a rheumatologist and a geneticist who they send off for genetic testing and rule out other types of EDS. And because we don't know the gene that causes the hypermobile type, you get diagnosed based off criteria, and if you fit that criteria you get diagnosed basically. You can't be diagnosed by anyone else. Like, it's the people that deal with this are geneticists, because it's a genetic condition, and rheumatologists. So they're the two people that you must see. You know, a cardiologist or your normal GP or whatever, they cannot diagnose EDS, and if they have, then I highly suggest you go and see like the people that know what they're talking about, because there is a lot of criteria to go through and a lot of testing to rule out other things, and there are so many other connective tissue disorders out there that mimic Ehlers-Danlos but aren't Ehlers-Danlos. So it's super important that you do get checked out by the right doctors and diagnosed by the right doctors. Do you ever think about aging with your condition? Like how your life will be at 40, 50 or 60? I do, but I also don't like to think that far ahead, because as much as I would love to make it to the ripe old age of 60, you know, the chances of me actually making it that long are kind of slim. I take a lot of medications that, you know, damage my organs, and I don't know if they're going to be able to hold out for another, you know, 40 years. There's just so many factors that come into it, but I do think about it, and I hope I make a miraculous recovery and things that won't be as bad as they are now. Maybe I can start living my life again at 60, who knows. But yeah, I do think about it sometimes. Tom is an amazing support to you. Do you have any advice for a new interabled relationship? I'm sick and my boyfriend is healthy, and how we as the sick ones can support our partners. Being in a relationship like Tom and I are, like when you have someone, like one of you is like ill or dependent on the other and the other one is completely healthy, it's a very difficult situation, and I think it was lucky for me because Tom came into my life as things were starting to deteriorate. Like when I was 17, that's when I met Tom. So I was still a child basically, because it wasn't always this bad at the start, otherwise things might have been different. But Tom's not that kind of person to, like, you know, just run away and ignore everything that's happening. Definitely a two-way street. Even though like we're the sick ones, like you still have to put in as much effort as they give to you, you know, and it doesn't have to be like physical effort, like making them dinner, like, you know, being there to support them mentally and to talk and like to debrief after, you know, a situation happens. Like when I have my seizures, that's like a big trigger for Tom, because he suffers from medical PTSD the same as I. So when I have my seizures, he's really calm and like focused in the moment, but after the whole event's over, he struggles, and it's kind of like a traumatic situation for him. Me just being there to support him, to talk him through it, you know, get everything off his chest. And because he's a man and he doesn't want to seem weak, it is difficult because he, you know, pushes a lot of those feelings and emotions down, and then it gets to the point where they're like bubbling over and he can't hold it in anymore, and then he has like a mini breakdown. So it's all about just showing as much support for each other as you can, and, you know, explaining things and debriefing after you have, you know, events, admissions, whatever it is. If I'm having a seizure, I'm unconscious. Even though I can still hear things that are going on, I can't respond, and I can't hold his hand and be like, it's okay, I'm okay. Even if I'm not, I can't do that, and he has to sit there and watch me fit in, you know, being intubated or whatever it is. And that is very traumatic for him. So after, it's all about getting him to open up and talk to me about the situation, talk to me about what he's feeling, and try and get him to relax and open up a bit more and have a cry if he wants to have a cry, like, because it's not good to bottle up all the emotion and all that stuff. Okay, we'll just do one or two more. I was wondering how you deal with people in your life not understanding your illness or even disbelieving you. So grateful for the awareness you are spreading, and your videos make others going through the same thing feel less alone. Oh. As far as people not believing me or not understanding, I've come to learn that if people don't believe you, or if they don't want to be there to support you, they're not your friend and you don't want them in your life. You know, I've had people that I've known for the last 10 years that I thought with my friends or family, and in my opinion there's not much you can do about it. I've just cut those people out of my life. If they don't want to be there for me when I need them, then I'm not going to be there for them. You know, friendship and all that it's a two-way street. You have to put in just as much effort, you know, regardless of my health situation. Like, that shouldn't matter because it's not affecting them, and if they're turning around, you know, not believing you, then that's their problem. Like, you really can't do anything. And I just don't want to waste my time on people, or any more time on people like that, if that makes sense. Okay, last question. Is there such thing as mild or severe EDS? How do you get diagnosed? So like I said before, you get diagnosed by a rheumatologist and a geneticist, but usually both is, you know, ideal. As far as the mild versus severe thing goes, like I said, EDS is a spectrum disorder, so you can have EDS and be very, you know, very mild symptoms. So more things like, yes, you're still like hypermobile, or, you know, you still have stretchy skin or whatever, but doesn't really cause you pain or discomfort. You know, you don't really have any other long-term health issues or anything like that. And then on the other end is, you know, very severe EDS, where you dislocate 1 trillion times a day. You know, your skin, yeah, you can pull it and stuff, but it hurts, it's sensitive. Then you have like other problems that stem from EDS. So I have like heart trouble, my organs have shut down, pretty much my stomach, intestines, bowel don't work, my bladder's paralyzed, like the whole body is just falling apart. Some people are wheelchair bound. Luckily I'm not at that point yet, but I have become a more frequent wheelchair user, but I try not to use it unless I really have to. And I've now got a smart drive, which I've had for a while now, but I keep meaning to make a video about it, but I haven't yet. I have to get that out and show you guys, and that's to help me be able to push the wheelchair and stuff. But yeah, let me know if there's anything else you want to know about EDS. I know not all these questions were exactly EDS related, so I might end up doing like another EDS video, but let me know in the description what you want from what you want me to produce. Anyway, I love you guys so much. Happy EDS Awareness Month. I hope you're all doing well, staying home, staying safe in these awful times that we're in. I love you guys to death. Sending all my love and support out to everybody that needs it. If you did enjoy this video, please do smash that thumbs up button, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below, and I will see all your beautiful faces in my next video. Bye guys. Love you.